Hey there, everybody. Well, it's September 30th, 2020, and I'm sitting here thinking about philosophical conundrums in the world and wearing orange pants, as you can see. Orange is one of my colors, and I just took a bong hit, and I thought that I would make a quick discussion about something that has been on the top of my mind for about 10 minutes now. That's usually how I do these things. I was going to make a video yesterday based on what truth really is, and I just said, God, dude, really? Are you going to do another one of those? It's like, nobody cares anymore what the truth is. And so the point is, I wanted to make, I guess, the idea that truth is subjective right now only where it matters. And what I mean by that is, we can agree on basic truths. I mean, we may not be able to agree on the shape of the earth or even whether space exists or whether there's one God or another or no God or political beliefs, but we can agree that, if you climb a mountain, the air is thinner at the top, or if you go out to the middle of the ocean and you dive in, it's probably going to be deep. Some very fundamental truths that we don't even argue because it's pointless. Now, there's always somebody who's going to. But the point is that when people say we do agree on a truth or a reality, we really do not. My idea of music is completely different from yours. That's not a negative. That's the beauty of it. Is what I mean is the differences we have. Our unique capacity to understand things in our own way, to perceive things in our own way, and yet still interact as a group, is part of what makes being a human amazing, in my opinion. And so I've come to the conclusion over the years, there is no one philosophy either that works for people. So when people start quoting like David Hume or Bertrand Russell or, even Terence McKenna or Manly P. Hall or modern day people think Jordan Peterson's a philosopher. And then there's certain people who I just find just shallow and boring, like Jordan Peterson, but it's very similar to a lot of the old philosophers. Not to insult him, but to say that every individual, even some of these well-known ancient, or maybe contemporary philosophers, they all have faults in their thinking. Nobody has a complete view of reality. So what I wanted to get to in this was, it's kind of like having the best opinion on cannabis. What's your favorite cannabis strain? And only a cannabis smoker would understand this, but it's very similar to food. There is no answer to that. When you say, what is the very best cannabis strain in the world? There is none. Sure, they have Cannabis Cup Awards and a variety of different, people saying, ooh, I think this is the best. But it's unique to each individual depending on which terpenes you like, which feelings and vibes you like, just like with music, just like with anything else. So whenever I have a conundrum or a question or an issue with trying to understand something, I come to this book right here. It's not that it gives me answers. It's that I look up to see if there's a chapter that deals with this situation. And it's called Enduring Issues in Philosophy. And it's a great book. I haven't read the whole thing. I read, chapters when I need to. There's only so many chapters. There's 5 chapters. The first one says, what can we know? And then it's broken down into subcategories where it makes bold statements about, it basically makes a claim. And then the discussion talks about a certain philosopher who made this claim. One would be, for example, all knowledge is gained through reason. Number 2 is all knowledge is gained through senses. Number 3 is intuition gives us knowledge, and so on and so forth. So chapter 1 is what can we know? Chapter 2 is what is ultimately real? Chapter 3 is, does God exist? Chapter 4 is, what is morality? 5 is, how are governments constituted? Which brought me to the discussion that I wanted to have on this video, pertaining to libertarianism. I've had a lot of people say, oh, your views seem libertarian. Why aren't you a libertarian? Or are you a libertarian? I would say the reason I say no is because I'm also not, the same reason I say I'm not a conservative or a Democrat. I understand the needs of a country as far as the people needing to act and vote and be active within their political system. But sometimes I step back and say, why should I? I'm forced to partake in a system I don't approve of. And why do I even want to argue with people about things pertaining to these discussions when I don't agree with either side? And people have said, well, why not libertarianism? The only reason I've ever given was because right now it's not an option because not enough people care. It's not that I wouldn't vote for a libertarian, but I wanted to break down what libertarian is. Libertarianism, and this one is by Johns Hospers. He was born in 1918, and a lot of this is based on his work. And the claim is that a just government is absolutely minimal. And I would honestly rather the government stay out of my business completely. I would rather live in kind of a community where we respect each other. Now, you know what comes to mind when you say that? Communism. Because that's almost by definition what communism really is. Living in communes or in a communal type lifestyle where you're taking care of each other. But the issue with libertarianism is that that forces people who are more talented or who produce more or work harder to subsidize those who don't work at all or who don't put in the effort. And this is totally understandable. So to get into it, otherwise if I ramble I won't get the point across. I'll put my glasses on since I'm 45 almost here and I need to it helps me to see in the dark here. It's somewhat dark. It says, what is libertarianism? And this is a major thing that a lot of people don't really point out. They say, I'm a libertarian, but they don't say what it is. The political philosophy that is called libertarianism, from the Latin libertas or liberty, is the doctrine that every person is the owner of his or her own life and that no one is the owner of anyone else's life. And that, consequently, every human being has the right to act in accordance with his own choices, unless those actions infringe on the equal liberty of other human beings to act in accordance with their choices. Now, this is the main important point right here, and this is why I have an issue with people who want to abolish government and consider that libertarianism. Unless those actions infringe on others, which means we still need laws, right? Which means we still need a police force or some group to enforce these laws, whether it be a militia or a police force or a federal or local, enforcement to make sure people don't infringe. And this is a long chapter, so I'm only going to skip to the... I highlighted a whole bunch of points I wanted to make here. I wanted to be somewhat prepared. Number 2 says, other men's lives are not yours to dispose of. And the example, and this is one I hear a lot, I enjoy seeing operas, but operas are expensive to produce. Opera lovers often say the state or the city, etc., should subsidize operas so that we can all see it. Also, it would be for people's betterment, cultural benefit, etc. But what they are advocating for is nothing more or less than legalized plunder. They can't pay for the production themselves, yet they want to see opera, which involves a large number of people and labor. So what they're saying in effect is, get the money through legalized force. Take a little bit of every worker's paycheck every week to pay for the operas we want to see. This is what's happening in a lot of cases. It's not just subsidizing anything like an opera or cultural, it's farmers. Farmers are heavily subsidized, sometimes to even get rid of their own crops. Dead serious. They're paid to dispose of milk, grain, all different types of things in order to make the market competitive, because the government has these certain mandates and rules and set limits and costs and tariffs on other countries. It's really absurd because the bureaucracy of what we have right now has become so intertwined. It's like what happened. I'm not going to compare it to Rome, but before Rome fell, one of the biggest issues was there was too much bureaucracy that nobody could get through all the red tape to get anything done. Basically, the wheels grind to a halt. If you have many different cogs, if you have many different gears, like in a watch, you can get a lot of different things done. But if there's too many gears, at some point, there's not enough power for all those gears. You have to increase the capacity. You have to replace more parts. It's, there's so many metaphors for it, but really the bureaucracy gets in the way, and we can't get anything done, and that's why we're at where we're at, and people are angry. And that's why libertarian is a great option, and why I feel I have to talk about this to explain my points here. and why. I'm not a libertarian, by the way, but why I agree with it, at least the points I agree with. There's another quote here that says, We should beware the inventors of utopias. They would remake the world according to their vision with the lives and fruit of the labor of other human beings. Number 3 also says, no human being should be a non-voluntary mortgage on the life of another. I cannot claim your life, your work, or the products of your effort as mine. The fruit of one man's labor should not be fair game for every freeloader who comes along and demands it as his own. And that's a major question. We are giving away a lot to people, but when you start talking about those who are less fortunate, we're not just talking about people who are taking welfare and not doing anything or not looking for a job. This image people might have in their heads. You have to have some sort of an understanding and a deeper, longer viewpoint of that than that. Put yourself in the shoes of someone like that. But put yourself rather in the shoes, if you fucked up your back tomorrow and you went on disability, you would say, well, I've paid into taxes, therefore I should be able to claim some disability. If you didn't have that disability, you might not be able to live, right? Pay rent or pay for your food or your medicine. Everybody needs help once in a while is the point. And the idea is that we can't abandon our humanity merely because we say you've got to fend for yourself. Even if we are in the right, if people in your own country are suffering, your two options are A, to kick them out and just ignore them, or B, to have to deal with the situation. So if we're true Americans and we say, well, people should fend for themselves, you have to realize it's like if your one neighbor in your neighborhood was completely poor and they had nothing and everybody treated them like shit. Why aren't they going to steal from their neighbors? What do they have to lose at that point? That's kind of where people are at. So taking care of each other, it really doesn't take that much. People don't want all your expensive watches and cars. Most people just want to be able to feed their family and pay for their medicine and pay for a roof over their head. So, on back to this part here. The next part is libertarianism and rights. Each man has the right to life. Any attempt by others to take it away from him or even injure him violates this right. Which brings back, goes on to talk about robbery. And this is kind of the point I was making before about having your police force of some sort to take care of you, to take care of other people. This requires taxes, because taxes have to pay for that police force. Now, somebody may be saying, well, no, actually, the local governments should be able to pay for their own police force. And if you can't afford your own police force, then too bad. That seems to make sense until you consider the fact that some of the worst, hardest hit areas with crime often have the least amount of money. It just doesn't work to say the local city government should be able to pay for their own forces. We live in a nation right now where if we want to heal, in a world where if we want to heal, we have to take care of each other. It's not just this nation. And I'm, looking at it realistically, because I would like to go back, buy a piece of land with my family and hide out and do my own thing and have the government completely out of my hair. In fact, if that was an option tomorrow, if we had 40 acres and a mule, and you say, hey, you can go out and do whatever you want on this 40 acres, it's yours if you just stay out of the city, I'd take it in a heartbeat. And what I mean is not stay out of the city. We still need to interact and buy food now because we're tied into it. But the idea that I don't want to be taxed and I don't want to be part of this society, but at the same time, if I want to have any type of benefit from it, if something goes wrong, it's almost like an insurance policy that we pay taxes, right? But also it's supposed to pay for roads, it's supposed to pay for bridges, help us drive our automobiles, Everybody I know drives, but so many people complain about taxes. Well, the thing is, your taxes in gasoline, your taxes in the things you buy. I think luxury tax is a phenomenal way to do it, and income tax. I think it's the most genius way to collect taxes because it's tax on the purchases that are made, but it has to be done respectfully. You can't just tax the hell out of people and just hoard that money. The problem isn't the taxes, it's the fact that the government will take hundreds of % more for their bureaucracy and bullshit costs for what they need to get done. And so, to go on here, These are just the parts I highlighted. It says, if you have a right to life, I have no right to take your life. If you have a right to the products of your labor or property, I have no right to take it from you without your consent. The non-violation of these rights will not guarantee you protection against natural catastrophes such as floods and earthquakes, which brings up insurance. But it will protect you against the aggressive actions of other men. Some governments, obviously not all, recognize and protect the rights that individuals already have. Governments regularly forbid homicide and theft, and at a more advanced stage protect individuals against such things as libel and breach of contract. Which brings me to an important part. That's one of the things the government should not do. It should not worry about breach of contract. It should not worry about libel suits. And this is where we get into the bureaucracy and the bullshit. The government should only protect against physical danger to human beings, and the rest of it should be up to people. Protecting patents and protecting people against speech, protecting people against other people saying bad things about them, which is what libel suits are about, is complete bullshit in my opinion. In fact, I don't believe in patent protection. I don't believe whenever I've had this discussion with people, I say I think they should end patent law and people should be open to make any generics, anything they want. Because when you talk about a free market, you're saying, well, a free market as long as I can make money, but nobody can copy my product. You know, I want somebody to protect me when I need it, right? And I think that's bullshit, because what it does is it allows drug companies or Disney to extend patents through their lobbying power, like Mickey Mouse for 100 years now. I mean, Disney has changed patents and copyright laws to extend their own protections on their own things because they have, billions of dollars. So, if you end that protection, the idea of people say, well, then people won't be innovative. I mean, come on. Are you kidding me? We're human beings. If I felt like I could make any product I wanted and not have anybody sue me for some copyright or infringement or patent infringement, hell, I had this idea for something and I looked it up. I wonder if I could make this. It was a headphone related thing. Of course, somebody already had a patent since the 70s, but nobody's ever made one. There's patent trolls who hoard these, ideas and never use them. So, sorry for going on a rant there, but the point is that I believe removing patent protection, removing copyright law, is the first step towards a more closer to a utopia or a free democracy than we have now. I mean, people act like they have free speech, but there's certain things you just cannot say. So I'll finish up this. Why not? It says, why, when you have individual property rights, why not have lands and houses owned by everybody together? Yes, this involves no violation of individual rights as long as everybody consents to this arrangement and no one is forced to join it. And that's the argument for communism, if you will. If people want to do it, it's their choice. But in the United States, for example, if people want to create a commune, they're considered criminals or traitors, right, to this country, because communism somehow having a commune goes against the nature of this, republic that we have, and it doesn't make sense to me. But for the last part, the last chapter here is called The Function of Government. It says the laws may be classified into three types. Number one, laws protecting individuals against themselves, such as laws against fornication, sexual behavior, alcohol, and drugs. Number two, laws protecting individuals against aggressions by other individuals, such as laws against murder, robbery, and fraud. And number three, laws requiring people to help one another. For example, all laws which rob Peter to pay Paul, like welfare. It says libertarians reject the first class of laws totally, which is protecting individuals against themselves. This is where I am libertarian. The idea that I need a law to tell me I can't smoke pot, or even that somebody can't shoot heroin, is ridiculous. If you look at the laws and you look at the actual cost, it's absurd. The cost of, I think that there was something in here about this, about drugs. It says drug addiction is a psychological problem which no present solution exists. Most of the social harm caused by addicts, other than to themselves, is the result of the thefts which they perform in order to continue their habit. And then the legal crime is the theft, not the addiction. The actual cost of heroin is about 10 cents a shot. If it were legalized, the enormous traffic and illegal sale and purchase of it would stop, as well as accompanying proselytization to get new addicts. And that's a fact. It is estimated that 75% of the burglaries in New York City today are performed by addicts. All these crimes could be wiped out in one stroke through the legalization of drugs. It says, libertarians also reject the third class of laws totally. No one should be forced to help others, not even to tell them the time of day if requested, and certainly not to give them a portion of one's weekly paycheck. And not to say that it's a selfish notion, but rather what they say is that governments, in the guise of humanitarianism, have given to some by taking from others, charging a handling fee in the process, which, because of the government's waste and inefficiency, sometimes is several 100%. Meaning that the government, for their fee for doing these great things, will charge 4 times more for their bureaucracy. This is why you have to trust, I guess, that humans will do the right thing for each other. I don't know if we will or not. I don't know if we just eliminated all these things, if really humans would step up and protect each other. But I know this. If people feel like they have to protect their goods from the government, then they're going to be less likely to want to help anybody else. It's kind of this, why should I help if I'm being taxed attitude. So, to go on, it says, all laws constitute what libertarians call moral cannibalism. A cannibal in the physical sense is a person who lives off the flesh of other humans. A moral cannibal is one who believes he has a right to live off the spirit of other human beings, who believes he has a moral claim to the productive capacity, time, and effort expended by others. It has become fashionable to claim virtually everything one needs or desires as one's right. Thus, many people claim that they have a right to a job, the right to free medical care, to free food and clothing, to a decent home, and so on. Now, is this true? I don't know. I mean, do we have the rights to medical care? No. Do we have the rights to anything? No. You don't have any rights. You've never had rights. There are no given rights to you. But I should say you have the right to do whatever you choose. You should be able to do anything that harms no other. It's a very simple law. Do what thou wilt, so long as it harms no other. The problem is it gets complicated. It gets complicated by people, complicated by laws, and those trying to work around those laws through loopholes. But, you know, I can't say for sure if people, you know, these questions run deep in the psyche. You know, it's, as for medical care, for example, do you have the right to go to the doctor? Should you be able to get treatment? Medical care is very expensive because it's a complete scam, because it's just the way the industry works. But the only way to stop that would be to have the government step in and tell these companies what to do with their medical care, which is bullshit too. So what do? I don't have health care. I've never had health care. I can't go to the doctor. I spent a bunch of money on my dentist a couple of years ago, and it's a lot of money to take care of yourself without health insurance. But if you buy health insurance, you're spending just as much. For my family, it'd be well over $1,000 a month, and that is just preposterous. But it's only for the amount we actually use it, right? The thing is, the question is, how much of my taxes subsidize the medical industry? I've had people argue with me that, well, free market is how it should be, and just let the market do its thing. And I agree with this, but only in principle, in theory, not in what's happening. If you look around and see how the government, they lobby the government and have laws changed and regulations removed for them, I mean, if we can't see that, we're screwed. Because, like, the pharmaceutical industry, I've had a couple people argue with me that, oh, well, you know, why don't you make the drug? Because I was saying this vaccine that comes out for COVID will probably cost a fortune. I probably won't take it anyway, because I know it's being rushed through. But it's interesting to see how much money they're probably going to charge for it. And somebody said, well, you know, they have to make their money. I said, you know, you don't realize these drug companies have been subsidized by the government, which means your tax dollars have been going to these drug companies for up to half of their research on a lot of drugs. And think about insulin, which has been around sometime longer than most of them. And now they're still charging up to $300 for one damn shot of insulin? I mean, it's disgusting. I've seen too many interviews with people who are giving up their medication so they can buy food for their kids. That is just disgusting. So there's a line there. No, yeah, sure, people should have to get their own health care. Okay, but let's make it reasonable and fair. So I guess what I'm saying in a long-winded way is that libertarianism doesn't work. Not in today's world. If we were to remove most of government, I can't say that it wouldn't be an improvement because, but right now with technology the way it is, how much things have changed, how much technology has changed. I mean, if we don't have certain rules protecting the less fortunate and the less wealthy, then they get tread all over. When people say we need to stop paying for schools or stop paying for roads and let cities do it themselves, it's preposterous. It just means poor areas will get poorer, and the rich areas will have nice big walls and fancy roads. And we know what that leads to. It leads to uprisings, war, and chaos within your country. And that's why a country, as Gandhi said, is only as strong as its weakest members. Take care, my friends. Let me know what you think.